There are several countries where Israelis are outright forbidden from entering due to political conflicts and historical tensions, where they're warned to stay away or face severe consequences. These nations enforce strict bans on Israeli passport holders, often citing deep-rooted opposition to Israel's policies or its very existence. Now let's look at the top 10 countries where Israelis are completely prohibited from traveling. 1. Lebanon. Lebanon has been in a state of conflict with Israel since the latter's establishment in 1948. The two countries have no formal diplomatic relations, and the Lebanese government enforces strict bans on Israeli citizens entering the country. Lebanon's passports explicitly state that they are not valid for travel to Israel, and the ban also extends to anyone with an Israeli stamp in their passport. The antagonism between the two nations stems from their numerous conflicts, particularly the 2006 Lebanon War, as well as Lebanon's alignment with the broader Arab world in opposition to Israel's policies toward Palestine. Hezbollah, the militant group based in Lebanon, has been involved in multiple clashes with Israel, contributing to the ongoing hostilities. Israelis attempting to enter Lebanon face severe consequences, including detention or prosecution. Despite Lebanon's natural beauty, vibrant culture, and historic sites such as Byblos and Baalbek, Israelis are unable to experience these treasures firsthand. For now, Lebanon remains one of the most closed-off countries to Israeli citizens, with little indication that this situation will improve. The deep political and military animosity between the two countries makes Lebanon an extremely hostile destination for Israelis, who are completely prohibited from entry. 2. Iran. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has been one of the most vocally hostile nations toward Israel. The Iranian government refuses to recognize Israel's existence, and Iranian law bans any Israeli passport holders from entering the country. This policy is not just a bureaucratic measure but reflects a deeply entrenched ideological stance. Iran's leadership frequently condemns Israel in public forums and actively supports anti-Israel factions across the Middle East, such as Hezbollah and Hamas. For Israeli citizens, attempting to visit Iran is impossible due to these travel restrictions. Even foreign nationals with Israeli stamps in their passports could face difficulties when trying to enter Iran, as the country takes a strict stance on anything related to Israel. Despite these restrictions, Iran is home to some of the world's most breathtaking cultural and historical sites. However, for Israelis, Iran is entirely off-limits, and the strong political and military tensions between the two countries make travel highly dangerous. Given Iran's firm position against Israel, there is no indication that this ban will be lifted anytime soon. 3. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has long been a key player in the Arab world and has traditionally enforced a strict ban on Israeli travelers. The kingdom's political and religious stance has placed it firmly in opposition to Israel, particularly concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Saudi Arabia has historically supported Palestine and condemned Israeli actions in the region. This political alignment has resulted in a total ban on Israeli citizens entering Saudi territory. Although recent years have seen subtle diplomatic shifts between Israel and Saudi Arabia, particularly due to shared concerns about Iran's regional influence, the travel ban remains in place. Israelis are prohibited from visiting the kingdom's many historic and religious landmarks, such as the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, as well as its growing tourist attractions like the Red Sea coast and the ancient Nabatean city of Al-Ula. For now, Israeli citizens cannot benefit from Saudi Arabia's new push toward tourism and its Vision 2030 project, which aims to diversify its economy by promoting travel. While there have been signs of diplomatic warming, the path to formalized relations and lifting of travel bans for Israelis seems distant. 4. Algeria. Algeria enforces one of the strictest bans on Israeli citizens, a policy deeply tied to the country's political alignment with Palestine and the Arab world. Algeria has consistently opposed Israel's actions in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and maintains no diplomatic ties with the State of Israel. The Algerian government has long supported Palestinian self-determination and regards Israel as a colonial entity. As a result, Israeli passport holders are completely barred from entering the country. Even foreigners with Israeli stamps in their passports may face difficulties in gaining entry. For Israeli travelers, this means they are unable to experience Algeria's rich cultural and historical heritage, including the ancient Roman ruins of Timgad, the vibrant city of Algiers, and the stunning landscapes of the Sahara Desert. Algeria's travel restrictions also reflect its broader political stance, as the country frequently speaks out against Israel on international platforms. The ongoing geopolitical tensions between Israel and Algeria are unlikely to ease in the near future, meaning that Algeria will remain a closed-off destination for Israelis, with little chance of this policy changing as long as current political dynamics persist. 5. Syria. Syria has been in a state of war with Israel since its establishment in 1948, and relations have only worsened over the decades. Syrian law strictly prohibits Israeli citizens from entering the country, and even travelers who have visited Israel or possess Israeli stamps in their passports are subject to interrogation or denial of entry. The ongoing civil war in Syria has further entrenched these hostilities. Israeli citizens are considered enemies of the state, and any attempt to enter Syria would likely result in arrest or worse. The Golan Heights, a region that was part of Syria until Israel captured it in the 1967 Six-Day War, remains a particularly sensitive issue between the two nations. The likelihood of these restrictions being lifted remains extremely low, especially with the ongoing internal conflict and strained regional alliances. 6. Iraq. Iraq has a long history of hostility toward Israel, dating back to the mid-20th century, and continues to ban Israeli citizens from entering its territory. Iraq was a major participant in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and has remained vocally opposed to Israel's existence ever since. Iraq does not recognize Israel as a legitimate state, and its passport explicitly bans travel to Israel. In return, Israeli citizens are strictly prohibited from visiting Iraq, making the country's historical sites inaccessible to them. Even travelers from other countries who have Israeli stamps in their passports may face difficulties entering Iraq. Iraq is home to some of the most significant cultural and historical landmarks in the world, such as the ancient city of Babylon, the Sumerian ruins of Ur, and the vibrant streets of Baghdad, a city with a rich cultural legacy. Despite the allure of these sites, Israeli citizens are unable to experience Iraq's heritage due to the ongoing travel ban. The volatile political and security situation in Iraq, compounded by its opposition to Israel's policies in Palestine, means that any diplomatic or travel normalization between the two countries is highly unlikely. For the foreseeable future, Iraq will remain closed to Israeli travelers, reflecting the deep-seated hostility between the two nations. 7. Malaysia. Malaysia is another country that enforces a strict ban on Israeli citizens, rooted in its unwavering support for the Palestinian cause and opposition to Israel's policies. Although Malaysia has never been directly involved in conflicts with Israel, it has long condemned Israel's actions in the Palestinian territories and, as a result, maintains no formal diplomatic relations with Israel. Israeli passport holders are prohibited from entering Malaysia, and even non-Israelis who have visited Israel or have Israeli stamps in their passports may face entry issues. Malaysia, known for its stunning natural landscapes, remains a country that Israeli travelers cannot explore. The ban prevents Israelis from experiencing Malaysia's rich culture, diverse culinary traditions, and historical landmarks like the Petronas Towers and the colonial architecture of Georgetown. While Malaysia's stance is not as aggressive as some other nations on this list, the government has repeatedly expressed strong disapproval of Israeli policies, especially in regard to Palestine. Given the political climate, the ban on Israeli travelers is unlikely to be lifted soon, keeping Malaysia off-limits to Israeli citizens and symbolizing its broader stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. 8. Pakistan. Pakistan is another country that explicitly prohibits Israeli citizens from entering. This ban is reflected in the Pakistani passport itself, which states that it is valid for all countries of the world except Israel. Pakistan's policy stems from its strong ties to Palestine and its alignment with other Muslim-majority nations in opposition to Israel's policies in the region. The country has a deeply entrenched stance against Israel, and Pakistani leaders have often spoken out against Israeli actions, particularly regarding the Palestinian territories. For Israeli citizens, this means that Pakistan, with its diverse landscapes and rich history, is entirely off-limits. Israelis are unable to explore the towering peaks of the Karakoram Range, the vibrant cultural scenes of cities like Lahore and Karachi, or the ancient ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. Although there have been minor, unofficial diplomatic engagements between Israel and Pakistan in recent years, the official travel ban remains in place. Israeli citizens face not only bureaucratic obstacles but also potential legal repercussions if they attempt to enter Pakistan. As such, Pakistan's travel restrictions for Israelis are unlikely to change in the near future. 9. Kuwait. Kuwait enforces a strict ban on Israeli citizens entering its territory, reflecting the country's firm stance against Israel and its support for the Palestinian cause. Kuwait has been a vocal critic of Israel's policies and actions in the Palestinian territories, and it remains one of the most ardent supporters of Palestinian statehood in the Arab world. The Kuwaiti government refuses to recognize Israel as a legitimate state, and as a result, Israeli passport holders are completely prohibited from entering Kuwait. Even non-Israelis who have visited Israel or have Israeli stamps in their passports may face difficulties when attempting to enter Kuwait. This ban means that Israeli citizens are unable to visit Kuwait's diverse cultural and historical sites, including the modern skyline of Kuwait City, the traditional markets, souks, and the iconic Kuwait Towers. Despite being a small nation, Kuwait boasts a rich history and has a strong cultural identity rooted in the Arabian Gulf's trading heritage. However, these attractions remain off-limits to Israeli travelers due to the ongoing political tensions. Kuwait's position on Israel is unlikely to change in the near future, as the country continues to uphold its long-standing commitment to the Palestinian cause. The travel ban on Israelis reflects deep-seated political and ideological differences, and it is expected to remain in place for the foreseeable future, making Kuwait another Arab nation that is inaccessible to Israeli citizens. 10. Bangladesh. Bangladesh, a predominantly Muslim country in South Asia, enforces a strict travel ban on Israeli citizens. This policy is rooted in Bangladesh's alignment with the broader Muslim world and its vocal support for Palestine. The country has consistently condemned Israeli policies in the Palestinian territories, and this has resulted in an absolute ban on Israeli travelers. Even non-Israelis who have previously visited Israel or have Israeli stamps in their passports may encounter difficulties entering Bangladesh. This travel restriction prevents Israeli citizens from experiencing Bangladesh's rich cultural and natural beauty. Despite these attractions, Israelis are entirely barred from visiting. Bangladesh's political stance against Israel shows no signs of softening, as the country continues to support the Palestinian cause. Given the current geopolitical climate, it is highly unlikely that Bangladesh will lift its ban on Israeli travelers anytime soon, leaving it firmly off-limits to Israeli citizens.